আনমিউট করে নিলে হয়।
Everything is okay?
Yes, sir. You can start now.
Welcome. Welcome to our today's international webinar on epithelial ovarian cancer, challenges in management, and jointly organized by Radiotherapy and Oncology Department of Dhaka Medical College Hospital, Gynae Oncology Unit of Dhaka Medical College Hospital, and Narayana Health India. And our scientific partner is Healthcare Oncology Bangladesh. Today, this session will be chaired by Professor Shapan Kumar Bandyopadhyay sir, Head of the Department of Radiotherapy and Oncology. And it's me, Dr. Qazi Iftikhar Uddin Ahmed, will be throughout the program as a moderator. Before starting, there is an announcement. There will be question answer session after the speakers note, and question will be answered by our panel of experts, and finally they will separately make their speak in short time, 2 to 3 minute times, and at last our chairperson will close the session by commenting shortly. I will now introduce our panelists now. We found our Professor Dr. Sabera Khatun Madam, Founder Chairman of Department of Gynae Oncology, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib Medical University. Our here present Professor Dr. Khodeja Begum Chumi, Professor Dr. Jannatul Firdaus Jonaki Madam, Department of Gynae Oncology, BSMMU, and Professor Dr. Jafar Muhammad Masood sir, Head of the Department of Oncology, Bangladesh Medical College Hospital. And our speakers are Dr. Kashifa Khatun, Associate Professor, Department of Gynae and Obs, Dhaka Medical College Hospital. She will be talking about the challenge of diagnosis of ovarian malignancy, particularly epithelial ovarian malignancy. And our second speaker is Dr. Kaustav Basu. He is Consultant Gynae Oncology, Narayana Super Specialty Hospital, Howrah. He will be talking about the surgical management of the ovarian malignancy. And finally, our third speaker is Dr. Rakibuddin Ahmed. He is Associate Professor, Department of Radiotherapy and Oncology, Dhaka Medical College Hospital. He will be talking about the medical management of ovarian malignancy. With the permission of the chair, I would like to request our first speaker, Dr. Kashifa Khatun, Associate Professor, Department of Gynae and Obs, Dhaka Medical College Hospital, to start her session with the permission of the chair. Sir, should we start?
দেখা যাচ্ছে স্লাইড?
Okay, it's okay.
Very good evening, everybody, especially in organizing committee, organizing learned audience and panelists in the country and abroad. It's my great pleasure to participate in this prestigious webinar. 1 minute. স্যার একটু স্ক্রিন মুভ করতেছে না, আমি একটু দেখে নিই। 1 minute স্যার, আমি একটু করতেছি। Side করে দিন। Side view করতেছি, তাই না? একটু stop করে
normally how it used to be.
আচ্ছা, আমি কি আবার নতুন করে করব? আটকে গেছে কেন?
Please say it again. Okay.
স্ক্রিন শেয়ার দেন,
হ্যাঁ,
স্ক্রিন
হ্যাঁ,
শেয়ার।
দিচ্ছি স্যার, কিন্তু কেন কেন আবার হচ্ছে না?
No, not this one. This one.
হচ্ছে না স্যার।
Okay.
হয়েছে হয়েছে।
হয়েছে কিন্তু মুভ করতেছে না তো স্যার, এটাই তো প্রবলেম। করবো
ম্যাডাম আপনার ল্যাপটপের স্ক্রল বাটন গুলো ইউজ করুন ম্যাডাম।
হ্যাঁ, আমি একটু দেখি।
Say here. No move.
হ্যাঁ,
Ah.
ওকে।
ওকে নাও ওকে।
Challenge in diagnosis in ovarian carcinoma. Approximately 90% ovarian tumor are epithelial in origin. Commonly occurs in postmenopausal women at 6 and 7 decades of life. Median age is 63 years. Ovarian cancer global prevalence in 2012, it was 239,000 cases. It will be 2035. Estimated 371,000 cases per year, and death 254,000 deaths per year. Between 13 to 21% of women undergoing surgery for a suspicious adnexal mass will have ovarian malignancy. Ultrasound examination is most useful and non-invasive method. Ovary is not easily accessible organ, and no reliable screening test is available. And ovary has no any precancerous condition, so it is very difficult to diagnose ovarian cancer in early asymptomatic women. So diagnosis of ovarian cancer need for management of adnexal mass and to differentiate diagnosis between primary ovarian cancer and secondary ovarian neoplasm. If you look in our daily surgery ward, 1 in 100 women treated with surgery is a malignant cancer, and most in postmenopausal women above 3%, and in suspected mass it is above 13%. So we need to refer patient in special gynae oncology. Death rate depends specialty of surgeon. In gynae oncology it is 1%, in general gynae it is 1.25%. If it's done by surgeon it is increased 1.3%. So risk of death is less in gynae oncology. Is it possible to better evaluate patient with adnexal mass? How can we assess and correct diagnosis of ovarian cancer? Role of ultrasonography. Clinical examination including abdominal, vaginal, rectal examination. Assessment of breast, groin, axilla, supraclavicular lymph node, and lung should be performed. Ultrasound should be primary workup tool, and complementary imaging performed in case of suspected carcinoma of ovary or indeterminate cases. Tumor marker assessment should be performed. International ovarian tumor analysis rules of ultrasonography that can predict ovarian malignancy. In benign tumors, it is unilocular, solid component less than 7 millimeter, acoustic shadow, and smooth multilocular lesion less than 10 centimeter. In Doppler, no blood flow. If one or more benign feature and no malignant feature, it is suggestive of malignancy. In case of ovarian malignancy, solid irregular mass, papillary projection more than 4, septal thickening more than 3 millimeter, ascites present, multilocular solid tumor more than 10 centimeter, And in color Doppler, blood flow is increased. If one or more malignant features and no benign feature present, it is suggestive of malignant tumor. Aorta divide adnexal mass into 5 components. Each component related with different risks of cancer. In case of intraocular tumor, death rate is 0.6%, and multilocular solid tumor, it is above 43%. Size of tumor is also important. In large tumor, accuracy is very less. Risks of malignancy index, if it is more than 200, suggests high risk of malignancy and is a threshold for referral to special center for further management. Here, ultrasound score, menopausal status, and CA120 level detected. No ultrasound feature is scored 0. If one ultrasound feature is scored 1 and more than 2 ultrasound feature is scored 3. Premenopausal is scored 1 and postmenopausal 3. Ultrasound feature suggestive of malignancy, multiloculation, solid elements, bilaterality, ascites, and evidence of metastasis. Is it possible to better evaluate patient with adnexal mass? How can we assess and reach correct diagnosis? Role of serum biomarker. They can help us for decision making, but they cannot diagnose ovarian tumor. CA125 cannot be detected in 10 to 20% of patients and elevated in non-malignant disease and highly associated serous cancer, but not to other histotypes. In FIGO stage 1, only 50% overexpressed. Human epididymal protein has sensitivity and specificity more than CA125. It is more specific than CA125. Not influenced by pregnancy, PID, menstruation, pregnancy, and other endometrial carcinoma, breast cancer. And roll-up score. ROMA is a predicted probability score using CA125 and human epididymal protein in premenopausal women and postmenopausal women. If premenopausal women, more than 1.3, highly suggestive, and postmenopausal women, more than 2.7, highly suggestive. How to distinguish primary ovarian cancer and secondary ovarian neoplasm? 10 to 13% of ovarian tumors are metastatic. Most frequent site is from breast, appendix, and colon. Ultrasonography has also important role to differentiate primary and secondary metastasis. In lymphoma, stomach, breast, and other tumor is solid. If tumor metastasis from colon, rectum, biliary tract, it is multicystic and irregular border. CA15-3 also increase in breast cancer. In some studies show it is also raised in ovarian cancer. And ratio of CA125 and CE more than 25, it is suggestive metastasis from GI tract. So tumor markers may be useful to identify secondary ovarian cancer. Further study needed. Surgery in low volume, low quality center discouraged. All patients should be reviewed post-operatively at a gynecological oncology multidisciplinary meeting. In late stage, detection rate of extraperitoneal split, PET-CT, is 20% superior compared to CT scan. Accuracy of abdominal disease compared to CT conflicting, no benefit over PET-CT. Sensitivity of omentum is 40 to 91%, diaphragm 43 to 74%, and bowel mesentery 6 to 56%. Here picture of preoperative imaging, adnexal tumor extends intraperitoneal, extraperitoneal. After operation, carcinomatosis deposit in peritoneum, under surface of diaphragm, spleen, and omental cave. MRI features suggestive of malignancy, size more than 6 cm, bilateral mass, predominantly solid mass, necrosis within solid mass, cystic lesion with wall septal thickening more than 3 mm, cystic lesion with papillary projection and vagination. And secondary finding ascites, peritoneal, mesenteric, omental disease, and lymphadenopathy. Diffusion rated MRI visualizes 3-dimension microscopic movement of water molecules, more restriction in solid tumor. It depends on availability and cost. Benefit for patient is no radiation exposure. And for full body diffusion weighted MRI, it is time consuming 40 to 50 minutes. Identification of non-ovarian malignancy, 81% superior compared to CT scan where it is 31%. And sensitivity of intra-abdominal case, CT scan is superior. Limiting localization, mesenteric roots, lesser omentum, celiac artery, liver section. Mesenteric root sensitivity CT scan 19 to 37%, PET CT 6 to 56, and diffusion weighted MRI 100%. If implant less than 0.5 centimeter, PET CT is superior compared to CT scan. If implants more than 5 centimeter, CT scan is superior than PET CT. Preoperative CT scan and diffusion weighted MRI and evaluation after operation. All results show diffusion weighted MRI is superior than CT scan. Is a quick diagnostic test on ovarian mass during surgery accurate? Confirmation of a histological tissue diagnosis should be obtained in women suspected advanced ovarian cancer prior to treatment with cytotoxic chemotherapy. If it is not possible to obtain histological tissue confirmation of suspected cancer, a cytological specimen may suffice, but decision on treatment-based cytology specimen should only be undertaken after correlation with imaging finding in MDTT setting. Role of frozen section. If the frozen section result reported the mass is benign or malignant, final diagnosis would remain the same, average 94% and 99% in the cases respectively. In case where frozen section diagnosis was borderline tumor, there is chance that final diagnosis would turn to a cancer on average 21% of women. So recommendation of surgical staging. In the absence of frozen section or in case of inconclusive frozen section, two-step procedure should be performed. Visual assessment of entire peritoneal cavity is recommended. Peritoneal washing cytology taken prior to manipulation of the tumor, and when no suspicious implants are found in the pelvis, paracolic area and subdiaphragmatic area, blind peritoneal biopsy are recommended. Bilateral pelvic para-aortic lymph node dissection up to level of left renal vein. So finally, diagnosis of CT, PET CT, diffusion weighted whole body MRI or diagnostic laparoscopy as Go suggested in advanced stage, and diagnosis of CT, chest X-ray and CT scan, PET CT for indeterminate lesion. A NICE guideline also suggests CT scan of abdomen and chest if clinically indicated. In early stage, transvaginal and transabdominal ultrasound is gold standard. If we can see benign or malignant, if suggestive, then MRI. In advanced stage, CT scan is gold standard and quality of the specimen sent to pathology. Surgical staging. Vertical midline incision is the best approach. The goal of surgery is to confirm whether malignancy present. If so, proceed with staging and cytoreductions according to protocol. Thank you. Thank you for question sharing.
Hello, do I move to the surgical management now?
So, Sohail,
Sohail bhai, unmute.
Yes, Dr. Kaustav Basu. Now I am requesting you to say about the surgical management of the malignant ovarian tumor.
Oh, just a minute. স্ক্রিন শেয়ার হতে?
Dr. Costa Basu.
হ্যাঁ,
Please start.
ইয়েস, স্ক্রিন শেয়ার আসছে?
না,
এখনো আসছে। জাস্ট হোল্ড অন প্লিজ। এবার এসছে?
no.
নট ক্লিয়ার। জাস্ট 2 মিনিট দিলাম, আমি জাস্ট টেকনিক্যাল।
Rubaiyat, can you suggest us what to do?
স্যার সম্ভবত ওনার স্ক্রিন শেয়ার করতে পারছেন না স্যার উনি, আমরা যেটা দেখতে পাচ্ছি।
আমরা কি নেক্সট স্পিকারে চলে যেতে পারি? ততক্ষণ আমি রেডি করছি।
Next speaker চলে যাব।
হ্যাঁ, আমি জাস্ট একটা শেয়ার করতে প্রবলেম হচ্ছে।
Professor Shapon Bandyopadhyay sir, should I go to the next speaker?
Sure.
Okay, now I am requesting Dr. Rakibuddin Ahmed sir, Associate Professor, Department of Radiotherapy and Oncology, Dhaka Medical College Hospital, to say about the medical management of malignant ovarian tumor. Dr. Rakibuddin Ahmed.
Okay,
Please share your screen.
am I audible?
Yes, audible, but your screen is not shared still now.
Okay.
Yes, it's coming. Yes, it is come. Please open your file. Yes, please start.
Am I audible?
Yes, audible and visible.
Thank you, Dr. Iftikharuddin Sohail, for introducing me. Honorable Chairperson of this session, respected panel of experts, learned participants of the session, my dear colleagues, and all beloved students. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. At first, I would like to congratulate and thanks to Professor Shapon Kumar Bandyopadhyay for arranging such a beautiful session and also choosing a topic that is very nice and intelligent topic. I think epithelial ovarian cancer challenges in the medical management. Actually, it is crucial and I think it is time demanding. I am really happy to be a part of this program. Thank you, my first speaker, Dr. Kashfia Khatun, for his elaborate presentation. Actually, ovarian malignancy, epithelial ovarian malignancy is always challenging. Here, challenge is starting from screening, or I mean challenge in screening, challenge in diagnosis of the disease, challenge
Diagnosis.
in surgical intervention like that, and challenge to the medical management. That is the part of me. That is today's my part of discussion. All of you are oriented that surgery is the prime mode of treatment of malignant epithelial ovarian tumor. Actually, most of the cases presented to us with advanced stage, and recurrence is the common feature. The ovarian cancer is not a single disease entity. Actually, it consists of various issues. So, in addition to surgery, multimodal treatment are nowadays used. This consists of chemotherapy, targeted therapy, especially PARP inhibitors and vascular endothelial growth factor inhibitors, hormone therapy, immunotherapy, radiotherapy, etc. Now, the chemotherapy. Actually, chemotherapy should be considered in almost all stages of ovarian epithelial cancer, except stage 1A, 1B, low-grade tumor. In that cases, actually surgery alone is optimum. That is 5 years survival surgery alone is more than 90%. Historically, in the last 40 years, there is a revolutionary change in the systemic therapy, starting from oral cyclophosphamide or melphalan to taxane group. Nowadays, taxane, I mean paclitaxel and carboplatin, is the first line chemotherapy. Is considered to be a first line chemotherapy. That is, and it is established in ICON 1. Dense dose chemotherapy were tried for progression-free survival in different trial. One of the trial is Japanese GOG 3016 trial. But dense dose chemotherapy ultimately a recent trial shows that dense dose chemotherapy does not provide any overall survival over conventional paclitaxel and carboplatin therapy. Combination of intravenous with or without intraperitoneal chemotherapy with platinum and taxane has been shown to be superior in many trials. Intraperitoneal chemotherapy preferred treatment actually in stage 3 disease, where survival increased 16 months when compared with standard chemotherapy to intraperitoneal chemotherapy. One study, GOG 172 study, that shows that survival when intraperitoneal chemotherapy is used, that is 65.5 months, and when conventional chemotherapy is used, that is 49.5 months only. But in GOG study, 250 study, results show no significant difference between receiving intraperitoneal chemotherapy or intravenous and intravenous chemotherapy. Not only that, intraperitoneal chemotherapy, there is some limitation, especially some toxicity. Regarding catheter-induced toxicity is a great problem. This is why nowadays intraperitoneal chemotherapy is not a promising one. Another issue, intraperitoneal chemotherapy is used only for 3 and to some extent stage 2 disease. No intraperitoneal chemotherapy is used in stage 1 or stage 4 disease. Actually, it is optimum for stage 3 where optimum debulking or R0 surgery is possible. Otherwise, intraperitoneal chemotherapy do not provide any superiority. This is a picture showing that is ICON 8 study. Here, first line chemotherapy with paclitaxel carboplatin with dense dose carboplatin and chemotherapy is compared. Here, the curve shows there is no significant improvement or any survival benefit when use dense dose chemotherapy. Patient with poor performance status and old patient are treated with single dose chemotherapy, or it can be used weekly. In 2017 update, NCCN panel recommendation another regime as a first-line chemotherapy, that is carboplatin and liposomal doxorubicin. It is especially important for diabetic patient or patient developing neuropathy after treatment. Not only that, another issue that this patient who would like to avoid alopecia, this carboplatin and liposomal doxorubicin protocol is another option as a first-line therapy. Actually, different agents, different schedule, different routes were used to improve progression-free survival in different settings. Because all of you are oriented that ovarian cancer recurrence is the challenging issue. Then neoadjuvant chemotherapy. Having surgery first is not always necessary. Sometimes we can use neoadjuvant chemotherapy, especially in advanced bulky tumor, I mean stage 3 or 4 disease, for elderly patient, comorbid patient, or with patient of poor performance status. Usually 3 cycles of neoadjuvant chemotherapy is given, and then response evaluation is done. If there is responsive tumor, then interval debulking surgery is done. After debulking interval surgery, then again adjuvant therapy or followed by maintenance therapy can be recommended. For stable disease, continuation of neoadjuvant chemotherapy up to 6 cycles is recommended. For progressive disease, consider it is a persistent disease with very poor outcome, and even targeted therapy, PRP therapy, and even hormone therapy can be given in that cases. That is, treat it as a persistent disease. Before starting neoadjuvant chemotherapy, patient should be evaluated by gynecologists for declaration whether that is patient is not feasible for optimum cycloreduction or R0 resection. Histological confirmation is also necessary. We can do FNSE, core biopsy, even parasynthesis followed by cytology or laparoscopy. But laparoscopic tissue or core biopsy is more preferable than FNSE. Adding bevacizumab with paclitaxel and carboplatin improve surgical feasibility. If we add bevacizumab, then 88.6% patient will be feasible for interval or interval debulking surgery in comparison to paclitaxel carboplatin, where it is 66.7%. But one thing should be kept in mind that bevacizumab should be withdrawn 6 weeks before the planned interval debulking surgery, because it hampers postoperative healing. So we can withdraw bevacizumab 6 weeks before interval debulking surgery. Now, after giving adjuvant chemotherapy or neoadjuvant chemotherapy followed by interval surgery and adjuvant therapy, evaluate the response of the patient. All of you are oriented that response evaluation is done by RECIST criteria, that is response evaluation criteria in solid tumor. If there is complete or partial response, then continue treatment, maintenance treatment should be given. For stable disease, we can advocate bevacizumab. After chemotherapy, if disease is progressive, then we can consider the treatment as a clinical trial or best supportive treatment, or treat as a recurrence like single therapy, hormone therapy, even PARP inhibitor like that. Staying alert for the return of cancer is very important because catching it early will provide best chance of treat. So there is a monitoring protocol for the first 2 years. We can monitor the patient 2 to 4 monthly, next 3 years, 3 to 6 monthly, and after 5 years, we can monitor the patient yearly. During monitor, we can assess physical exam and pelvic exam by gynae oncologist. For radiological evaluation, we can do CT chest, abdomen, MRI, even PET CT scan. And another issue is evaluation of the CA-125. Now recurrence. Actually, I have already said that majority, that is more than 80% in stage 3 and 4 disease patient will recur. Recurrent epithelial ovarian cancer actually not curable but treatable. Even complete response is also possible. 3 types of recurrence may occur. One is biochemical relapse, that is raising of CA-125 only. Second, radiographic relapse. It means relapse assessed by radiological tools like CT, MRI, even PET. Another is clinical relapse, that is it should be emphasis regarding clinical impression, that is gradual weight loss, pelvic pain or bloating of the patient, and even urinary symptoms all include clinical relapse. Now, treatment-free interval. We should assess treatment-free interval. We can assess this in 3 ways, and there are 3 types. One is platinum refractory. Another is platinum refractory means disease progression during treatment or within 6 weeks. That is called platinum refractory. Another is platinum sensitive. That is disease recur after 6 months. And platinum resistance, that is recurrence of the disease within 6 months. That is called platinum resistance disease. Actually, this figure show a typical treatment course of advanced ovarian cancer. Here you can see that first primary surgery or interval debulking surgery, and after primary treatment, that is adjuvant chemotherapy with or without bevacizumab, that is first line chemotherapy, a disease will progress, that is first response. Then during follow-up, again 70 to 80% patient will progress within 3 years, that is second relapse, third relapse, like that. And ultimately disease will progress 100%, and 100% patient will develop, ultimately turns to death. This is the course of disease. Here I want to see the NCCN guideline 2020. This is a flow chart, that is stage 3, 4, and 2 post-primary treatment. We can treat with adjuvant therapy in addition to bevacizumab or without bevacizumab. When bevacizumab not used, and molecular diagnosis should be done, and BRCA1 and 2, that is wild type or unknown type, and another is somatic or germline BRCA mutation 1 or 2. If we do not use bevacizumab in upfront or primary treatment, then after giving during follow-up, we can assess complete partial response or stable disease. For case of complete and partial response, if wild type or without mutation, we can observe the patient even, or we can apply niraparib as a maintenance therapy. But if there is stable disease or progressive disease, then we can consider the disease as a persistent disease. Okay, when we use bevacizumab as a part of primary therapy, then according to BRCA mutation, if for the complete and partial responder, we can continue bevacizumab as a maintenance therapy, or we can add bevacizumab with olaparib, I mean PARP inhibitor as a maintenance therapy. For stable disease, we can treat it as a persistent disease with very poor outcome. And if bevacizumab with BRCA mutation with complete and partial response, we can maintain bevacizumab with olaparib, and this is the total flow chart of NCC guideline. Here I want to see an example, actually the course of advanced ovarian cancer. From this line you can easily see there is actually ovarian epithelial malignant tumor is consist of two part. One is disease free part, another is one is recurrence free period, another is disease free period. And from this chart you can easily see that starting from here, then first line therapy, that after surgery the curve line diminish, and there is a progression free survival again raise CA-125 again, and this way first line, second line, third line, fourth line, like that, ultimately death. These are the course. Now I have already seen most of the patients presented to us at the advanced stage, I mean stage 3 or 4, that have a very high recurrence rate, 80 to 90%. And we can treat it as a as follows. Actually, I have already said that we can assess the patient in radiological, biochemical, and I mean clinical relapse. So no overall survival benefit is observed in a randomized control trial comparing early treatment with relapse, that is based on CA-125, versus observation until symptoms or physical examination triggered the disease assessment. What I mentioned, that is only increasing CA-125, I mean biochemical relapse. When biochemical relapse started, early treatment do not provide any overall survival benefit. When physical, radiological, or clinical examination or clinical examination dictate us recurrence, then treatment start is essential. Now we can divide it as a platinum sensitive recurrence disease. The patient should be treated with platinum containing drug combination if it is more than 6 months. And the choice of treatment depends on many factors: pre-existing comorbidity, prior toxicity, physicians and patient preferences also considered in this way. Actually, this is the art of an oncologist. He should definitely familiar to the drug toxicity, drug pharmacokinetics, and choosing of drug is essential for a good decision of treatment when recurrence occurs. Actually, recurrent disease can be retreated with multiple course or multiple lines of therapy. I have already said in the slide. Platinum-based chemotherapy, we can use paclitaxel carboplatin. We can use liposomal doxorubicin and carboplatin. We can use gemcitabine carboplatin. There is another promising combination chemotherapy, that is carboplatin and albumin-bound paclitaxel. Here, overall survival is 79%, and complete response is 39%. Even secondary surgery can be considered if progression-free survival more than 12 months. GOG study 0213. We can add a bevacizumab also for progression-free survival. Here, if we add bevacizumab, progression-free survival will be 12 months in comparison to 8 months with combination therapy alone. Now the platinum-resistant ovarian cancer, as disease recur within 6 months, so it is called platinum resistance. In that case, we definitely select non-platinum based regime, usually docetaxel, gemcitabine, weekly paclitaxel, oral etoposide, liposomal doxorubicin, topotecan can be used. A combination chemotherapy is not preferred in case of platinum resistant ovarian cancer, but it is not true always. If patient is fit enough and others condition allow, and this is the decision of the oncologist. Other agents can be used. Even we can use capecitabine, we can use oral cyclophosphamide, we can use vironalbine, and we can use nab-paclitaxel in platinum resistance disease. Now, I have already said actually different drugs are trial in different ways, even though it is not curable and recurrence is a common phenomenon. So targeted therapy are introduced in various ways to improve the progression-free survival. One of the targeted therapy is bevacizumab. Actually, this is vascular endothelial growth factor targeted monoclonal antibody. It has shown to shrink or slow the growth of advanced epithelial cancer. This is the patient. This is the preferred option. Patient who have recurrent disease, especially with ascites. We can use bevacizumab as a first-line therapy as per NCC guideline. I have already said, and it can be used as a maintenance therapy with olaparib, that is PARP inhibitor, in patient whom BRCA mutation and patient with at least partial chemoresponder. This is actually approved, FDA approved in May 2020 in this year. One thing should be kept in mind that bevacizumab have some toxicity, especially we kept in mind regarding GI perforation, hypertension, and even stroke. So be careful when we should be careful when we use bevacizumab as a therapy in recurrent cases. This is the chart, that is Kaplan-Meier chart. You can easily see from this chart. This blue only chemotherapy, and this yellow line indicates bevacizumab with chemotherapy. Here, from this study, we can easily see that progression-free survival is better in bevacizumab plus chemotherapy combination group. Now, another very important PARP, I mean poly-ADP ribose polymerase inhibitor. This is actually a very good drug introduced. First introduced is in 2014. PARP inhibitor are FDA approved as a maintenance therapy in platinum sensitive relapse in patients who have complete or partial response. PARP can be used as a first line maintenance therapy in BRCA mutation advanced ovarian cancer. It can be used as a previously it can be used as a third line, fourth line ovarian cancer, recurrent ovarian cancer. In addition to olaparib, other PARP inhibitors are available, that is rucaparib and niraparib. That is the mechanism option of PARP and PARP inhibitor. From this chart, you can easily see that is PARP is an enzyme that plays an important role in DNA repair, including repair of DNA damaged by chemotherapy. So when you use PARP, it inhibits PARP. When you use PARP inhibitor, it inhibits PARP protein and contribute cancer cell death and increasing the sensitivity of chemotherapy. So it is two as it showed. One, it is DNA repair defect, and another is chemotherapy induced DNA damage. From this slide, you can easily see that is single strand break, double strand break. In case of normal cell, it is viable. And when there is homogeneous recombination deficiency cancer cell, I mean BRCA mutation 1 or 2 like that, so there is cell damage. This chart is very important. That is timeline of DNA FDA approval for PARP inhibitor. First approval BRCA associated cancer as a fourth line. I have already told that is third or fourth line beyond. This olaparib was introduced in 2014 as a third line or fourth line recurrence. Then in 2017, niraparib, that is another PRP inhibitor, it is introduced and as a maintenance therapy in platinum sensitive recurrent disease. In 2018, it is used as a maintenance therapy in BRCA associated cancer. Patient are complete or partial response to platinum or chemo. That is as a frontliner drug. And
We have
in
short in time, sir.
okay, and in 2020, niraparib used as a maintenance therapy in advanced ovarian cancer who are incomplete or partial chemo responder as a frontline. This is the POALO study. Here, that is first line surgery upfront adjuvant therapy response with complete and response. And if we add olaparib for 2 years, bevacizumab, addition of bevacizumab with olaparib increases survival. And on the basis of POALO study, FDA approved olaparib as a first line frontliner PRP inhibitor in May 2020. And this slide shows simply patient with HRD positive patient, I mean homogeneous recombinant deficiency positive patient, in case here with BRCA mutation, here without mutation. If there is mutation, BRCA mutation, then easily you can see from red line, that is progression-free survival is 37.2 months versus bevacizumab and placebo. This is in BRCA muted patient, and without mutation, the survival is a little bit less. So from this study, we can say that olaparib is used in BRCA mutant patient and BRCA non-mutant patient also, in addition to bevacizumab. Now, in addition to other multimodal therapy, hormonal therapy is another issue. Hormonal therapy only considered in asymptomatic recurrence patient, or if regular chemotherapy is not tolerable. Drug used in hormonal therapy is tamoxifen, letrozole, and magistral acid also. Radiotherapy, previously radiotherapy used as a whole body radiation. Now it is absolute. Only it is used as a palliative therapy for palliation. And last slide, in 2020, what new treatment options are under development? Actually, last few years, many drugs are coming, but not sufficient, because recurrence is common, and definitely advanced ovarian cancer is not curable. So research is working day by day, and these are the newer drugs: vaccines, antibody drug conjugates, targeted therapy, protein therapy, gene therapy, and immunotherapy, that is anti-programmed dead cell one. These are the newer molecules in the treatment of malignant ovarian malignancy. Thank you, all of you, for patience here.
Thank you, Dr. Rakibudin sir, for your nice presentation. I know there is some questions from the audience. Now I am requesting Dr. Kaustubh Basu to present his session about the surgical management of the ovarian malignancy.
You can share the screen now. Can you?
Dr. Kaustubh Basu.
I can share the screen myself now.
Okay, start. Please start.
Is it okay? Can you see the screen?
Oh, sir, your screen
no,
is not
still now
visible.
not. Still now not.
Not yet. Now?
I think it's coming. Yes, yes. Now we are seeing.
Yes.
Yes, please start.
Rafi, for such a nice presentation on medical management on ovarian cancer. So the topic of today's discussion is uh, like challenges in management of ovarian cancer, right? So already we all know that ovarian cancer management is a challenge. It's surgery, medical management, a lot of chemotherapy, targeted therapy, as we just heard from sir. And over that, we have now a new challenge called COVID-19. So I would talk about the already existing challenge and then talk a bit about the current challenge we are facing in ovarian cancer management. Am I clearly audible to all of you?
Yes,
Sir, we
sir.
can hear you. You can hear you.
Yes, sir.
So ovarian cancer, as we all know, is under a broader classification called peritoneal surface malignancy. Okay, so it, this peritoneal surface malignancy is a newer entity, newer term rather, which encompasses cancers in ovaries, appendix, colon, rectum, stomach, and all other organs. Uh, Generally, it is arising from the peritoneal surface of the abdominal cavity. It can be a peritoneal surface of the visceral organ. It can be peritoneal surface of the parietal abdominal cavity. So together it is known as primary peritoneal cancer, and we treat it as a entirely as a together entity all together. So which initially these tumors were thought of incurable in the past, but we all know that it responds to surgery, to chemotherapy, and to the most aggressive therapy we know is cytoreductive surgery with hyperthermic intraperitoneal chemotherapy, commonly known as HIPE. So just a little bit about the pathogenesis of peritoneal surface malignancy. So two types of pathways are there, type 1 pathway and type 2 pathway. I'm coming to this slide because the surgical management also depends, the management of ovarian cancer also depends on this pathway. Type 1 pathway is a rather a low-grade pathway where we deal with low-grade cancers, whether it can be serous low-grade cancer, it can be mucinous, endometrioid, or clear cell cancers. These are mostly locally advanced cancer, not those cancers which present with massive ascites, not responding to chemotherapy, platinum-resistant type. So these are more of localized, locally advanced, and especially it penetrates the adjoining organs like rectum, bladder, peritoneal surfaces, and all. So this is mostly KRAS, BRAF dependent. And another pathway is the type 2 pathway, which is the most commonly seen pathway, p53 signature mutation pathway, which ultimately leads to high-grade serous ovarian cancer. So if we see the pathogenesis, there is a we now know that the ovarian cancer arises from the peritoneum and from the serous epithelial surface of the fallopian tube. So how exactly it happens? P53 signature mutation. It results in an entity called serous tubular intraepithelial carcinoma (STI), and that causes micrometastasis on the ovarian surface, and there is further genetic instability, resulting in serous ovarian cancer. So as a surgeon, I also believe in this pathway, and the management also differs based on this pathway. We know that these low-grade entities, low-grade cancers, do not respond that well to chemotherapy. So if a patient comes to me with advanced ovarian cancer, but more of a low-grade type, we preferably try to debulk it first. So surgery is preferable in this segment in a primary setting, not in an interval setting. However, in a high-grade serous carcinoma, which is more aggressive ones, which will cause ascites, peritoneal disease, uh, mostly present in stage 3 and stage 4. In those cases, neoadjuvant chemotherapy followed by interval surgery will be preferable. So this pathway uh, will like direct you to the management of ovarian cancer. So we all know the FIGO staging of ovarian cancer, early stage, locally advanced stage, advanced stages. We all know that. There's just need no further explanation. So I would come to some cases like case-based approach in ovarian cancer management. Suppose we have a adnexal S12 patient coming to us with a pain abdomen. We do ultrasound examination. Ultrasound shows a pelvic SOL. We immediately order tumor markers. We all know CA125, CEA, CA19. This has all already been discussed in our first lecture. And we calculate index called risk of malignancy index or RMI. And based on this RMI, we decide how the further management. So when the RMI score is more than 200, what we do, we need a better imaging like CT scan, like PET scan to characterize how exactly the disease is. So if the disease is confined within the ovary, then the preferable management would, and definitely the RMI is more than 200 and all the CT scan finding or the PET scan finding is suggestive of malignant neoplastic ovarian mass, stage 1 type, then the preferable treatment would be to go for laparotomy, frozen section, and so any oncology center should have a facility for a frozen section, and a pathologist who reports the frozen section should be trained enough to at least do some, at least confirm whether it is malignant or not, or borderline on the few sections he or she does during the frozen section. So once the frozen section report is there, according to the report, based on the report, you decide how to proceed with the surgery. So it is the same fitting surgery where you can go ahead. So it's called laparotomy, frozen section, and proceed. Another case where we can see, this is a CT scan of a lady with profuse peritoneal disease, omental disease as it's marked over there. And so how do we proceed in such a case? Already it is upstage, the disease is not in the ovary. So there is no harm in doing a image guided biopsy. So we do a image guided biopsy or a ascitic fluid tapping, as sir mentioned earlier. And but we have to remember that ascitic fluid tapping will give you a result of metastatic adenocarcinoma. But that metastatic adenocarcinoma report is not adequate in today's era of ovarian cancer management. You have to know the primary source of organ. Adenocarcinoma can be from rectum, colon, pancreas, from wherever it is. So you have to know the primary source of the origin of the tumor. So it's done immunohistochemistry. So IHC examination, these are the various types of IHC markers routinely done over the blocks achieved. And based on the IHC markers, we can achieve approach as well with mental mass, peritoneal deposit, with ascites. So as I told you, we do ascitic fluid tapping or biopsy from the mass and do IHC from that. And we now confirm that it is a primary ovarian cancer or fallopian tube cancer or a primary peritoneal cancer. So how to approach in such a case? So first we assess the performance status of the patient, whether she is advanced stage or whether she is not a good performance status candidate. So if the performance status is good, then we go for if it's poor, then we go for a neoadjuvant chemotherapy, and we do a response assessment after 3 cycles for interval cytotherapy surgery. But if the primary ovarian cancer is like, if we sometimes do a CT scan of thorax. So if the thorax shows lung parenchymal lesion or CT whole abdomen is showing a liver parenchymal disease or abdominal wall metastasis, then it's already stage 4B. So in a poor performance setting, in a stage 4B disease, it is always preferable to go for a neoadjuvant chemotherapy followed by response assessment or interval reduction surgery. However, if the pleural fluid cytology is positive, but there is no parenchymal, lung parenchymal metastasis, or if it is an abdomen confined disease, then we should discuss the image in a multidisciplinary team meeting. And if the meeting, the radiologists tell you that it is a resectable disease, then preferably we should go for a primary cytoreductive surgery. So a good performance status patient, a resectable disease, and So in those cases, we definitely should go for a cytoreductive surgery primarily, with or without HIPEC. But in a poor performance status patient, in a stage 4B disease, we should definitely go for a neoadjuvant therapy. But resectable disease is minded, that term is important because resectable disease is resectable in a setting where cytoreductive surgery is routinely performed. So in an institute where cytoreductive surgery is routinely performed, there only a primary cytoreductive surgery is preferable. So pre-operative assessment, this is the most important slide of my presentation today. So it's not any patient coming to your chamber and you feel that is an ovarian cancer patient and you put scalpel on her. You just tell the patient that you are going for surgery because ovarian cancer management starts with the surgery. But you have to assess your patient. You have to take a proper history take. You have to assess the performance status. Mind it, this kind of surgeries, debulking surgeries, last for 10 to 12 hours. If you do a proper debulking surgery, it will last for 10 to 12 hours. And you have to assess whether the patient can undergo, whether the patient can tolerate such a massive surgery. So as I told you, the performance status should be assessed. The nutrition status, whether there is excessive medical comorbidities of the patient, and definitely optimization of the chest. Because when you do these massive debulking surgeries, your patient is on ventilation for 2 to 3 days. You are not extubating the patient just immediately after post-operative period. So once you extubate the patient, if your lung is not ready, then there will be chance of basal atelectasis, there will be pleural effusion, and finally pneumonia, and you may lose the patient. We have initial part of the training, we have lost many patients because of pneumonia. So the first thing I do when a patient comes to my chamber is to hand a spirometer to the patient and train her how to do it. So if your lung is prepared, so within a 2 weeks time, the patient is going to the theater, then the recovery rate is much faster, complication is much lesser. So, chest physiotherapy is the most important thing in a long ovarian cancer surgery. And after that, MDT planning, as I already told you, we should convey the decision of the tumor board to the patient and relatives. We should take an anesthesia approval, risk categorization. We should chalk out the surgical plan. All the patient and relatives should be explained what exactly are we going to do, what are the complications of this surgery, the percentage of mortality in this kind of surgery. You have to explain them everything, and definitely proper consenting before undertaking the procedure. And definitely it's a team of peritoneal cancer surgeons, anesthesiologists, critical care assistants, pathologists, psychiatrists, nursing staff, OT technicians, housekeeping staff. It's a teamwork. It cannot run on your own. So this is how we pre-operatively prepare the patient. We give epidural analgesia along with the general anesthesia. We do a central line to manage any fluctuations in the BP during in the intraoperative period. We do arterial line. We give intermittent pneumatic stockings during surgery. So this will help in circulation of the blood so that there is no deep vein thrombosis in the post-operative period. Thermoregulation is very important. It's a 10-hour surgery. Your patient should be properly under thermoregulation. So first thing what we do is, once, even if we have a CT scan report that it is a resectable disease, but still we go for a small incision surgery. Sometimes in laparoscopic surgery in ovarian cancer, it's very difficult to assess the resectability because there is profuse ascites. You cannot negotiate the laparoscope to the diseased area, and it's sometimes difficult to assess. So what we do is we give a smaller incision, we put the scope inside, the camera inside, and without pneumoperitoneum, without disturbing the abdomen, we check what exactly the disease is. Quadrant-wise, the 9 quadrants of the abdomen we check and we quantify the disease. So it is called peritoneal carcinomatosis index. So it is universally recognized index, and we score according to the size of the tumor and the regions as mentioned. So LS1 we mentioned where there is no tumor, LS0, LS1 is when the tumor is 0.5 centimeter, LS2 tumor up to 5 centimeter and LS3 tumor more than 5 centimeter. So according to we give a score, and ultimately the scoring will decide the resectivity. So this, if you draw this paper and suppose the patient comes with recurrence in a maybe after 2-3 years, you can say that this was the PCI in the initial surgery. So this patient had definitely had a chance of recurrence in future. So this is how we can score, and so this is the incision line. We should give liberal incision from Xiphisternum to pubis, and pictures what we see after entering into the abdomen. There are huge omental caking. If you can see, this is supraco, this is stomach, this is liver, this is the supracolic omentum, and this is the picture commonly seen. This is the diaphragm, right diaphragm. You can see there is a lot of disease out here. You can see this is the falciform ligament disease. This is the lesser omentum over the stomach. There is disease. So this is exactly the picture routinely we see in a stage 3C or stage 4A ovarian cancer when we put her for surgery. So this is the right diaphragmatic disease we can see. Okay, so these are all resectable. Mind it, this looks that there is massive disease, but when we come out of the surgery, everything is clean. These are the bowel serosal disease. These are the mesenteric deposits, and this will all come out. Okay, so what is the evidence behind this cytoreductive surgery? So this was first described in 1934 by me, and Griffith published his work in 1975 that the surgical resection of the tumor bulk should be done in as a primary treatment of ovarian cancer. Okay, so Bristow et al. In 2002 they did a meta-analysis, and they showed that surgery it showed 10% increase in maximum surgery was associated with 5.5% increase in median survival time. So the more we debulk, so 10% increase in cytoreduction, we increase the survival time, median survival time to 5.6%. So this is, and the MSKCC pioneer surgeon Dr. Dennis. So he also proved in his publication in 2009 that improved progression to survival as well as overall survival in advanced ovarian cancer, the result of change in surgical paradigm. So I'll come to this paper. So this is how he proved, the Dennis. What he said that if you leave behind less than 0.5 centimeter residual disease, the median survival is going to be 66 months. But see, if we leave behind microscopic disease, so the median survival will be 106 months. So the lesser you leave behind, the more is the survival. That is the Kaplan-Meier graph of showing the survival benefit. So surgery versus interval debulking surgery, this debate will continue. In a surgical conference we will attend, everybody will prefer a primary surgery, while in a medical oncology conference you attend, everybody will prefer an interval surgery. So as you age as a surgeon, you feel that certain points are in favor of primary surgery, but definitely certain points are in favor of neoadjuvant chemotherapy. That balance you have to maintain as a surgical oncologist. So this trial, this EORTC NCIC randomized controlled trial, and it was published by Vargot et al. They yielded comparable results, both in case of neoadjuvant chemotherapy as well as primary surgery. And the CHORUS trial also supported their report. So both of them showed that the overall survival is almost comparable. See, 29, 30, 23, 34, so 24. So the overall survival is almost comparable in both the groups. So they showed that there is no extra benefit of doing primary surgery versus the interval surgery. But as a surgeon, what we feel when doing primary surgery is that large, bulky tumors, they are often necrotic and hyperactive with poor blood supply. So chemotherapy does not reach the end organ. And neoadjuvant chemotherapy also eliminates the miliary tumor deposit. This is what exactly I feel as a surgeon, that sometimes less than 2 millimeter deposit, this will vanish when you give neoadjuvant chemotherapy. The platinum sensitive tumors will almost vanish. So there, once the chemotherapy effect will be gone, and during the interval setting, we will miss those diseases, and that tumor will come back or maybe after 2 years. So those miliary deposits in a interval debulking surgery. And primary debulking surgery also will remove the tumor bulk of both chemosensitive and resistant clones. So this is why the primary surgery is often preferred. This is what we remove en bloc, sometimes in almost every fourth or fifth case of ovarian cancer, we have to remove the sigmoid and the rectum. This is how the specimen is removed: the uterus, the pelvic peritoneum, the sigmoid, and the rectum. En bloc specimen, we call it is a posterior exenteration. So supracholic omentectomy we have to do. Sometimes we have to remove the spleen along with the distal part of the pancreas as a part of debulking. So most of the patients we see is hilar disease with the omental cake. So see, this is the diaphragm disease, what we were seeing initially, right diaphragmatic peritoneal disease. And after peritoneectomy is done, the diaphragmatic muscle is exposed, and this is what the diaphragmatic peritoneum is removed. So this is how we can achieve complete site reduction. Previously, the term was R0, R1, R2. Now the terminology has changed to CC0, CC1. So complete site reduction 0, complete site reduction 1, complete site reduction 2. So microscopic disease, less than 5 millimeter disease, less than 1 centimeter disease. This is the current figure. So this is how sometimes we have to do liver resection also to achieve complete site reduction. So this was the same paper which was published by Dennis T. And he showed that initial days, so it was a coverage from 1987 to 2004. So in 1980, from 1987 to 1994, standard textbook surgery used to be done, PHBSO, infracholic omentectomy. From 1996 to 1999, the surgical complexity increased. So there was more incidence of rectosigmoid resection, low anterior resection, that is. So once they started doing those cases, those surgeries, you see that on this y-axis, the survival has increased from 34 to almost 45 months. And in 2001 to 2004, they started doing this extensive abdominal surgery, upper abdominal surgery, like liver resection, distal pancreatectomy, diaphragmatic, and you see the survival has increased up to almost 55 months. So this shows that more the complexity of the surgery, the better the survival benefit is. So this is how
স্যার কোশ্চেন অ্যানসার কি লাইভ করবেন নাকি স্যার পরে পরে করবেন স্যার?
should I continue? আমি continue করব?
আচ্ছা স্যার, ঠিক আছে স্যার।
Okay. So there is a question about lymphadenectomy in ovarian cancer. So whether to do lymphadenectomy in ovarian cancer or not. So there is a trial called Lion trial in which we see that in early stage ovarian cancer, there is a chance of upstaging of the disease. Okay, so we see that in intraoperative diagnosis was stage 1, but when we have removed the lymph nodes, it upstaged to stage 3C. So post-operative adjuvant chemotherapy was required. But in advanced ovarian cancer, we have seen one arm there was lymphadenectomy was performed, and the other arm lymphadenectomy was not performed. But it has been seen that in the no lymphadenectomy arm, the median OS was 69 months, while in the lymphadenectomy arm, it was 63. See that there is no extra benefit, survival benefit of doing lymphadenectomy in stage 2B to stage 3 cancer. So we are trying to now skip lymphadenectomy procedure as a whole, pelvic as well as thoracic lymphadenectomy in advanced cancers. Definitely we remove those bulky lymph nodes, but if lymph clinically feels not palpable, then we try to skip the procedure because it will save at least 40-45 minutes of surgery. Because the hours of surgery will count and it will reflect in your post-operative period. Okay, so this was the Lion trial curve. So finally, the Lion trial report showed that in advanced cases with doing lymphadenectomy, you are not achieving extra survival benefit. So this is the ERAS protocol. The ERAS means the early recovery after surgery. you should do lung optimization, as I already told you, that pre-operative lung optimization is important by doing incentive spirometer, and post-operative by doing vigorous chest physiotherapy. So you should have a chest physiotherapist who should vigorously start doing these exercises after surgery. You should give adequate fluid, you should give adequate analgesia so that the patient can do those exercises. Antibiotics should be given as per institutional protocol. Parenteral nutrition sometimes we give. DVT prophylaxis is very important. As I told you, intraoperative we give pneumatic stocking. Post-operative we give the low molecular heparin. So post-operative chemotherapy, as previously my speaker has said, we have already known that there can be IV chemotherapy, there can be intraperitoneal chemotherapy, and there are a lot of second line, third line targeted therapies. But there has been reports where it is shown that intraperitoneal chemotherapy with cisplatin and paclitaxel has improved survival outcomes. And there has also been reports that weekly dose of carboplatin and paclitaxel, which is known as dose-dense chemotherapy, that has also improved the survival outcome. You can see conventional regime is showing 62 months of OS. The dose-dense regime, which is the VT regime, it is showing 100 months of OS. So definitely OS has improved in this Lancet trial. And the intraperitoneal chemotherapy, IP regime, we can see they've improved OS in the IP regime segment. So coming to the most advanced form of ovarian cancer management is the hyperthermic intraperitoneal chemotherapy, or HIPEC. What exactly it is? So it is the intraperitoneal administration of chemotherapy so that the drug is delivered at the peritoneal surface. Hyperthermia means 42 degrees. And how does it act? Because in this 42 degrees centigrade, the penetration of chemotherapy to the peritoneal surface is much more. The sensitivity of the cancer cell to the chemotherapy by impairing DNA repair, and it induces, this heat will induce apoptosis and activate heat shock proteins that serve as receptors for natural killer cells, and it will inhibit angiogenesis. So it will have a direct cytotoxic effect on the proteins. So these are the mechanisms by which heat acts on the cancer cells along with the chemotherapy. So this is my team doing HIPEC. So we are regularly doing HIPEC in Narayana Health, Kolkata. So there is a dialyzer machine. It's almost like a peritoneal dialysis machine. There is an influx and there is an efflux. The influx tube is bringing the chemotherapy into the abdomen. The efflux is taking out the chemotherapy outside, and we have to attain a 42 degrees centigrade temperature to achieve good response, and this should be done for 90 minutes. So this is how we do hyperthermic intraperitoneal chemotherapy, but mind it, it should be done once complete site reduction is achieved. You leave behind disease and you apply hyperthermic chemotherapy, that will not give you any good result. So it has to be once the complete site reduction is achieved. So there is a recent trial, Dutch trial, which showed the interval debulking setting, the result of HIPEC. So there were 245 patients, they were included, and 89% they achieved, they had CRS, they had recurrence. So if we see the crux of the trial, it showed that 33.9 months in the surgery group, the overall survival, and 45.7 months in the surgery plus HIPEC group. So there is definitely increase in overall survival with this advanced technique of surgery. So the recurrence regime, as already been mentioned, like we all know that there is platinum sensitive disease, resistant disease, refractory recurrence. We can do secondary site reduction plus minus HIPEC. We give second line chemotherapy like lipodox, gemcitabine, carboplatin, cisplatin, cyclophosphamide, and definitely bevacizumab, anti-angiogenesis factor is already mentioned, and newer PARP inhibitors as a maintenance therapy in BRCA positive cases. So this is the Society of Gynae-Oncology statement on hereditary genetic testing on ovarian cancer. The SGO is recommending all high-grade serous ovarian cancer should be tested for BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutation, because not only the patients who have history in family should be screened, but almost 35% they have a chance of developing BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutation. So you can miss if you are not doing it. So they are recommending testing for all population having high-grade serous ovarian cancer. So what is the take-home message from this today's talk? Is like primary surface, peritoneal surface malignancy is the leading cause of death of women both in developed as well as developing countries. Primary treatment is always surgical, followed by adjuvant chemotherapy plus minus targeted therapy. And surgical management has evolved over ages from conservative approach to more radical ones, like I mentioned. And the reason behind this is better understanding of tumor biology. We now know which tumor to debulk and which tumor is more chemoresponsive. And with better control of comorbidities, we can control diabetes, we can control hypertension, heart disease, and everything. And newer advent of biomedical technologies and advanced perioperative care, multidisciplinary approach, we can handle these radical surgeries. And definitely, this sort of surgeries, as I already told you, should be done in a center where these procedures are performed in volume, so that the outcome is definitely much better. Thank you for your kind attention. With regards from Narayana Super Specialty Hospital, Kolkata, I thank you again for your kind attention.
Thanks, Dr. Kaustubh Basu, consultant gynecology, Narayana Super Specialty Hospital, Howrah. Our estimated time is already over. Now I am requesting our panel of experts to say something shortly about their experience of this session from their life, practicing life. I'm requesting Professor Dr. Jannatul Firdaus Jonaki, Department of Gynecology, BSMO, to say something. Dr. Jannatul Firdaus Jonaki.
Yes, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. At the outset, I would like to give thanks to the organizer and to include me in this academic event. And actually, for the management of ovarian cancer, there are certain challenges, I think, because ovarian cancer is one of the deadliest cancer, and approximately 1 in 73 women will develop ovarian cancer in her lifetime, and 1 in 1,000 will die eventually. And in our country, ovarian cancer is also increased due to lifestyle or the presence of the risk factors. And epithelial ovarian cancer actually heterogeneous group because it has certain subtypes, and these subtypes mainly depend on the clinical feature, molecular characteristics, prognosis, and like. And also regarding the challenges, I think ovarian cancer diagnosis is sometimes difficult because the markers for the diagnosis of ovarian cancer are not specific, like CA125 or other tumor markers, CA19-9. These are not specific for ovarian cancer. And sometimes in advanced stage, we cannot take decisions whether we should go for upfront surgery or we should go for neoadjuvant chemotherapy, because nowadays we can't follow the standard procedure like which is described in various literature like Fagotti scoring. We can't do that in our country. So we have to take decision on the basis of clinical characteristics of the patient and the marker, and also we have to depend on the radiological features, and we have to take decision whether we shall go for upfront surgery or neoadjuvant chemotherapy. And regarding actually all the speakers, they have described very nicely. First of all, Dr. Kashifa, for the regarding the diagnosis, she have described all the important things and covered all things. And Dr. Rakibuddin also put out all the latest information regarding the adjuvant oncological adjuvant chemotherapy. And presentation of Dr. Bashu is also very much informative. But I want to just talk about the Lion trial. Dr. Bashu, in Lion trial, actually, I think though it's a very good trial and multicentric trial, randomized control trial, but it has certain limitations because in that trial, they included 647 women with advanced ovarian, patient with advanced ovarian cancer, that is stage 2B to 4, as you have mentioned. But the inclusion criteria was the those who had in whom complete cytoreductive surgery could be achieved, and there was no palpable lymph nodes. And I think this is the limitation. So when complete cytoreductive surgery can be achieved and there is no palpable lymph nodes, then no need to do lymphadenectomy. It's okay. But when complete cytoreductive surgery cannot be performed, and then we cannot also, there is no benefit to do lymphadenectomy. But if complete cytoreductive surgery could be performed, there is no disease in the upper abdomen or anywhere in the pelvis, but there is clinically palpable lymph nodes, then we have to remove that. You have also mentioned in your lecture. And
You.
sorry?
I'm interrupting you. So we did a study in our center also. Nodes. So even those bulky nodes we removed, were quite bulky. So we had massive nodes, aorta, paraaortic stone, and all those. But finally, once the biopsy report came, the final report was they were all reactive. So we have done a for almost 60-65%.
Yes, you are right. In most of the cases, the report came as reactive changes. And one thing, as Dr. Rakib mentioned regarding secondary cytoreductive surgery, he has mentioned that secondary cytoreductive surgery can be done when disease-free interval more than 12 months. But there are also other selection criteria, like if there is oligometastasis or isolated disease, and performance status obviously should be good, and no ascites, and of course it should be platinum sensitive disease, then secondary cytoreductive surgery can be done. So I like to conclude my speech again by giving thanks to the organizer, and also especially to our professor Shapun Kumar Bandopadhyay, a dynamic personality who always try to include a versatile group from different organizations. Thank you so much. And also I like to give thanks to the health care oncology, I think healthcare oncology, for arranging such a program. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Now I'm requesting Professor Dr. Jafar Mohammed Masood, head of the Department of Oncology, Bangladesh Medical College Hospital, to say something shortly.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me in this, I'll rather say, exciting session. Because in our practice, we get the ovarian cancer heterogeneously, and mostly the patient comes in late with the late diagnosis. So most of the patient we deal, especially I practice medical oncology, so most of the patient we deal with the in advanced stage. So, and of course, there is a diagnostic dilemma, as Dr. Kashifa already mentioned. And so, but regarding management, the upfront management is surgery, of course, no doubt. And whatever the stage is, the cytoreduction is the choice for treatment or curative intent. And important parameter that consider in relapse disease or in advanced stage is, as Dr. Rakibuddin mentioned, well said, That is, the parameters are the platinum-free interval, and histological subtype is very important, and prior lines therapy, and side effect of previous therapies, and any genetic alteration, as Dr. Basu mentions. All the patients should go for mutation test or germline and somatic BRCA testing, because the maintenance therapy is very important in case of advanced ovarian cancer, and you should not ignore about the maintenance therapy rather than the bevacizumab or other thing. And we have in our hand many PARP inhibitor, and also the paclitaxel we use as the maintenance therapy for a long term, such as years. So patient are getting better result. So again, I thanks all the speakers and audience and respected chairman of this session, Shapan Bandyopadhyay, and also a very good presentation with Kaji Iftekaruddin Ahmed. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Now I'm requesting Professor Dr. Khodaja Begum Jhumi Madam, Head of the Department Gynecology Unit, Dhaka Medical College Hospital, to say something shortly.
Respected Chairperson, Professor Dr. Shapam Kumar Bandyopadhyay, Professor and Head of the Radiotherapy Department, Dhaka Medical College. Respected panelists, Professor Sabira Khatun, Founder Chairman, Department of Gynae Oncology, BSMU. Professor Jannatul Firdaus Junaki, Department of Gynae Oncology, BSMU. Professor Dr. Jafar Muhammad Masood, Professor and Head, Department of Oncology, Bangladesh Medical College Hospital. Learned participants of this session, Assalamu alaikum and good evening. Not it is evening, it is going to be late night. Today I am very much delighted to attend time-demanding seminar on epithelial ovarian cancer and challenges in its management. Ovarian cancer is the 5th cancer of female genital tract. 1 in 70 females suffer from this dreadful cancer. Among all ovarian cancer, epithelial ovarian cancer is the most common and usually diagnosed at a late stage, so prognosis is not good. Pathology of ovarian neoplasm is of most complex area of gynecology, because the ovary gives rise to a greater range of variety of tumors than does any other organ. While in other organs, the tissue of origin is usually fairly clear. The tissue from which an ovarian tumor arises is often uncertain, and the mode of development of presumptive tissue is often disputed. Ovarian tumors are characterized by an extraordinary and bewildering variety of histological pattern and grades of malignancy. All the three speakers elaborately discuss its diagnosis, surgical management, and chemotherapy. That is medical management. So it is I will not cut short my discussion, and thanks these speakers who elaborately discuss and enrich our knowledge, and I thanks to the scientific partner, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, and the moderator who Kaji Iftekaruddin Ahmed, who nicely conduct the session, and we have learned lots of new things and review our knowledges. So thank to the organizers for this session, for this webinars, and thank you all for patience here.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for your nice comment. Now I'm requesting Professor Dr. Sabira Khatun, madam. She is the founder chairman of Department of Gynae Oncology, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib Medical University. Professor Dr. Sabira Khatun, madam.
Thank you all. Am I audible? Thank you.
Yes.
At first, I would like to give my thanks to Professor Shapon Kumar Bandyopadhyay for including me in this nice session on epithelial ovarian cancer. Actually, epithelial ovarian cancer is a very expanding subject, I think, among all ovarian cancer. Because the origin of epithelial ovarian cancer is so, now it is so diversity that it's very difficult to take decision, especially the low-grade tumor, high-grade tumor, origin of the serous tumor from the fallopian tube epithelium, origin of the mucinous tumor from the tube-ovarian junction and ovary, and origin of the endometrioid and clear cell tumor from the endometrioma. This type of diversity making us very, it is very difficult to take decision. And Dr. Kaustubh Basu has nicely explained about the origin of the tumor and the differentiation between the low risk and high risk, low grade and high grade ovarian, epithelial ovarian cancer. It's very important to take decision about the fertility preserving surgery for epithelial ovarian cancer. And another point is I like from Dr. Kaustubh Basu's presentation is that he has given very nice elaborate discussion about the evaluation of the patient's condition and evaluation of the disease. Evaluation of the patient's condition, including counseling, nutritional factor, all these factors should be evaluated and counseled with the patient. And the evaluation of the disease is very important, especially the peritoneal carcinomatosis index, to take decision about the whether we will go for primary surgery or we will go for neoadjuvant chemotherapy. And it's very important, peritoneal carcinomatosis index, and he has shown very nicely to determine how the peritoneal carcinomatosis index can be determined laparoscopically and by CT scanning. Now Dr. Kaustubh has also shown the evaluation how the gradually the debulking surgery for ovarian cancer has been developed from early 70s to 2004. From the total abdominal hysterectomy now up to the resection of the diaphragm, thoracoscopy, and the resection of the pleura. All these things can be done. That is upper abdominal surgery, resection of the pancreas, spleen, all type of surgery can be done for ovarian, epithelial ovarian cancer. And this evaluation of the stages of surgery is very important. So you are the young gynecological oncologist. I think you should be very experienced and skilled to do the extensive upper abdominal surgery for ovarian cancer. You gynecologist, the young gynecologist should take the responsibility to learn and to be skilled about this surgery. Now the role of lymphadenectomy is very controversial for ovarian cancer. Now the lymph node involvement has been included in the FIGO staging. So I think the lymphadenectomy is very important to stage that, to confirm the stage of the disease. And still it is on the study basis, that is Lyon study. Now the HIPEC, that is high temperature chemotherapy, they are practicing in India. I think it should also be practiced in Bangladesh also. And I think it is not so very difficult. Now about Rokibuddin presentation, I want to say that the Rokibuddin I like his presentation very much, and he is very, he goes for presentation very step by step. Ultimately, the vascular endothelial antagonist and bevacizumab, oliprinumab, hormone therapy, everything he has covered. I like his presentation very much. And I think we should also consider the patient's burden about the cost. But it is very, very assuring that the BRCA1 and 2, to do the BRCA1 and 2 for serous epithelial cancer. And it is the BRCA1 and 2 positive patients can be treated by bevacizumab, and maintenance therapy can be given. But we should also think about the burden of the patient. And so Dr. Kashifa has given a nice presentation about the diagnosis of the ovarian cancer. It's very difficult to diagnose, and RMI, Roma, these are the different type of studies for diagnosis of ovarian cancer in its early stage. And because early stage diagnosis and treatment of the early stage ovarian cancer give very good results. So these are an attempt, these are studies, Roma, RMI, all these things are the attempts to determine the diagnosis of ovarian cancer in its early stage. And these are also very controversial. CT scanning, MRI, PET scanning, very costly. Whether we will use the PET scanning for the diagnostic purpose, or we will use the PET scanning for the follow-up of the patient for diagnosis of the recurrence of the disease. So these are very controversial, many things. There are many controversial issues. Even then, we have to manage the patient, very considering the patient's condition, patient physical condition, there is financial condition, hospital condition, availability of the facility. All these things should be considered for the management of the ovarian cancer. So thank you all the presenters for their nice presentation, and thanks again Dr. Professor Shapon Kumar Bandyopadhyay and healthcare for supporting this scientific session. Thank you all.
Thank you, madam, for your nice comment. This is the time for chairperson. Before going to chairperson, I am Dr. Kazi Iftekharuddin Ahmed, saying everybody good night. Dr. Shapon Bandyopadhyay sir, Department of Radiotherapy, head of the department, will conclude the session by his speech. Dr. Shapon Kumar Bandyopadhyay sir, Professor of Radiotherapy.
Unmute করতে হবে।
Is it clear?
Yes.
So it's already late actually. Even then I should have to say a few positive words towards our beloved backbone of the session. It is the participants. In the beginning I have seen almost 80 plus participants were there.
Now it is 17.
Yeah, it is regressing because of delay in night. I thank first those attendees who encouraged us to be there to show their respect towards our learned speakers, because this is the way to respect our speakers. Because when I was asking our speakers, especially Dr. Kashifa, Dr. Rakibuddin Ahmed, they took it so simply that they can be able to talk on this occasion. But their simple version to say yes to such type of webinar cost there some trouble making procedure, because in order to make slides, make it contentfully, to draw attraction of the giant professors in this audience, it is not so easy. So starting from the participants, and secondly, learned our speakers, especially from abroad. And when I was thinking about Dr. Kaustubh Basu, I was thinking in the management of ovarian epithelial cancer, a very famous song, probably he knows, but I'm pretty sure the elderly people learn about this song. Let me say two few words. Ganga Amar Ma, Podda Amar Ma. Why I'm telling this song? Because when you are dealing with epithelial ovarian cancer, medical oncology and surgical oncology will go beside. So this is two Bangla bringing the same disease, and this is two expert countries who will make a very bright outcome of the management in the ovarian epithelial cancer. So we will be fighting together along with our surgical specialists from India or West Bengal, from Bangladesh, and you have seen the biggest umbrella, as I think, in the issue of gynecology is Bangladesh. That is Professor Sabera Khatun. When I took the responsibility to arrange such an webinar with the aid of Narayana Health, Howrah, Kolkata, I first thought about Professor Sabera Khatun. The lady is always with us, and she was the founder chairman of Gyno-Oncology, the beginning of Gyno-Oncology as a separate entity in Bangladesh. So hats off to Professor Sabera Khatun, because now number of followers are increasing in Bangladesh. The incision, what was not vertical in our early days in epithelial cancer, it is transforming into vertical incision. That is a major stepping forward in the management of surgical management of ovarian epithelial cancer. Regarding costing of medical oncology and other PARP inhibitors and others, actually this is the issue of policy making people. We are just users, and we see the tragic moments of the people who want to survive, but because of the poverty of this country, I think the India also face this sort of problem in the expenses issues in the management of ovarian epithelial cancer. With these few words, again, Professor Khudeja Jhumi Madam, I saw her sporting spirit when I was sharing the issue of webinar. She, along with Dr. Kashifa, came to me, extended their hands of cooperation with the Department of Radiotherapy and Oncology. I think they will be ahead of the Department of Radiotherapy and Oncology, as because you see, the people who love sports, who love to run faster, they will win the race. And I think Professor, under the proper guidance of Professor Khudeja from Dhaka Medical College, her generation will be in the, like Usain Bolt, win the race. Again, only foreigner, that is Dr. Kaustubh Basu, hats up to you. You are, I think, quite young, at least younger than our people, and you are doing brilliant job over there. With these few words, I must thank our people from the Department of Radiotherapy and Oncology, especially Dr. Rukhsana Rabbani Dina, Assistant Professor, Dr. Tonima Adhikari, and other colleagues and our students, beloved, who are in this show. Thank you so much. We are not too late, but for learning, sometimes you should be in some occasion to be late, but this late attendance will bring some positive moments in your life. With this few words, and thanks to everybody, especially healthcare, who brought us technically together. And finally, I must bow my head off towards those people, especially doctors, who sacrificed their life during the fight against COVID-19. Be careful about your lives so that we can save beloved lives of our valuable patients. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. সবাইকে ধন্যবাদ দিয়ে উঠে যাচ্ছি আমি
Good night. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good night.